On today's episode, we have Shandee Chernow, the president and CEO of CertiStar, joining us for a conversation focused on branding and how to build a business. She's a local entrepreneur who's well known for her expertise in food allergies and helping local restaurants to boost their business. If you're interested in learning more about branding or entrepreneurship or best practices, this is an episode you want to tune in for. Shandee, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you, Lindsay.
The one thing I think is always important is just to kick the conversation off with who exactly are you and what is your business? So would you mind just sharing a little bit more about your background before we get started in today's conversation?
Sure, no problem. I'm Shandee Chernow. I'm the president and CEO of CertiStar, which is a software company based here in the Valley. We provide food allergy software to food service. So restaurants, hotels, schools, hospitals, anywhere that you can, cruise lines, whatever. Anywhere that you can accomplish the task of eating food outside of your home is a potential customer of ours. So background wise, my degree is in computer science and math, and I went to Vanderbilt. Started off working for a couple of different software companies in the data querying, business intelligence. There's all sorts of buzzwords that we can use in that space. And what happened is that I found that food allergies in restaurants really is just kind of a big data problem. They've got this big list of things that go into items that go into a menu that end up serving, guests. And some of those guests have a big list of food allergies. And essentially what we do is we cross-reference those in a great amount of detail in the background and provide the guest with everything that it is that they can eat.
And the reason why we thought you'd be a phenomenal resource to the business community and why we wanted to bring you on today's show is just to talk a little bit more about leadership best practices as well as branding. You've done a phenomenal job as far as building a personal and professional brand.
Thank
So
you.
as we kick this off, I would just love to hear from you, your commitment to branding as a whole and how that's really helped to set you up for success with your business.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So all the companies that I've worked for, I suppose I should say none of the companies that I've worked for have ever been that 800-pound gorilla, right? I've never worked anywhere where you pick up the phone and call a potential customer and say, oh, I'm Microsoft, I'm Oracle, I'm Google, I'm, something that's going to make someone take the phone call. And so when you start a company and you don't have a great big name, which we still don't, but we're getting better, one of the things that you have to do is make yourself out there such that if someone were to Google you and find nothing, that's bad. So when you call them and you tell them who you are and they go to the internet and try to find you, we've tried to put enough of a footprint out there that people are like, oh, this is a real company, this is a real person who's running it. And, they have customers and they have things to say and they add value. And so really that's where that comes from, is the need to exist when someone goes to look you up and decides if they want to work with you or not. And I suppose that's kind of the core of the brand, right? There's some social medias I'm better at than others. You probably giggle looking through, our old Instagram stuff before we got, real marketing. But that's really what it comes down to is showing who you are and why you exist and what you're trying to do, and letting customers in a little bit on that so that they want to work with you.
And curious, what platforms have been the most successful for you with communicating your story and your brand?
Oh, probably LinkedIn, I would think. Probably, a little bit of Facebook and Instagram, but because we're B2B, it's much easier on LinkedIn to identify who it is that you want to talk to. We're probably skilled at Facebook. It's kind of the platform that we're all the most used to, but the identifying of the audience is really difficult there. It's hard to say, where people work from a Facebook, from an Instagram perspective. And so, B2B, it really lends itself the best to LinkedIn.
So I'm curious, a lot of leaders that we often interface with have a commitment to professional development themselves. So as you look to enhance your business and as we're all navigating COVID-19, trying to figure out new things and new ways to go about business, how do you do professional development? Do you attend conferences? Do you read books or blogs, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I'm more of a relationship person. So there's actually a few people that we have in common. We were talking about this a little bit before. We've got a bunch of people in common on LinkedIn, and quite a few of those people are really big network connection type of people. They like relationships and they like helping other people. And, so meeting those people and conversing with them and always asking for advice. I think that's one of the hardest things, for people who have it in them to start businesses and go out on their own. I think the hardest thing is asking for help. And so finding people who know the things that you don't know is probably the biggest thing for me. I mean, if we look around in my bookshelves, you'll find, 99% fiction, but there's also a whole bunch of, business and social media and marketing and, getting from 0 to 1 and 1 to many. Those types of books are up here as well. I'm less good at getting all the way to the end of all those, and much better at, asking other people who have done it before what their advice is.
So I have to ask, you're an entrepreneur and there are so many people that think about starting businesses, however, just haven't taken that leap of faith or haven't quite gone the distance yet. So I'm curious, what advice would you have for those individuals that are thinking about potentially starting their own business?
I would say just do it, right? You're never going to be ready. You're never going to know all the things that you need to know. Every single day, there's things that I'm Googling that I had no idea I needed to know in doing this, right? I've screwed up so many things along the way. I had to go and find somebody who knew how to do it. And, I've run up against so many different walls, and literally every day there's something that you learn that you had no idea before. There was never going to be a day that I figured all those things out, because until you run up against it, you don't know that you need to know it. So yeah, jump in, get going, ask for advice.
And if there's any advice that you could have given yourself at a younger age, what advice would that have been?
Go get your MBA. I don't know. No, probably take more business classes. And, again, my degree is computer science and math, and I really focused there, right? I kind of stayed away from anything else that at this point would have been useful. Maybe some business classes, more than the required economics, maybe a psychology class or two somewhere in there. I really didn't do any of those things. So I think, finding some of those skills that are outside of what it is that you're kind of naturally good at or predetermined to do is probably pretty useful.
You have some phenomenal tips as far as what it looks like with, building teams and then, meetings and whatnot. So one thing that really stood out to me was the concept of meeting with each person only when they need it, not just because it's out of repetition or just creating that consistency on a weekly basis. So would you mind expanding on that thought process?
Yeah. So, I worked for a lot of people before I started the company. I guess I was 39, right, when I started CertiStar. And so that gives a lot of years, too many years of experience working for other people before I did this. And I think that there were some really, really positive do's and don'ts that I pulled from past experiences of my own. And probably the thing that really always resonated with me. I was going to go with recognize. That wasn't the right word. The thing that always resonated with me was when a manager was willing to manage me, not me just as another member of the team. So there are certainly people I've worked for who managed everybody the same exact way, and it really never worked well for me. It was always a contentious relationship. And so I really try hard to work with everybody as they need it, which isn't necessarily the same as what they think they need, by the way. So I probably push people a little bit outside of their comfort zones, but I think meeting everybody where it is that they're at. We have lots of team meetings and lots of team conversations, largely so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. Nothing in those conversations is a surprise to me, right? It always feels like they're reporting stuff to me in the team meetings, but really it's for each other. It has nothing to do with me. I already know what's going on. And that's because we have individual conversations kind of all the time. I've told everybody on my team, I say this in hiring, if I need to call you, something's wrong, right? Anytime you have a question, anytime you need help, anytime you have something exciting to tell me, pick up the phone, tell me. Right? Don't wait for a meeting to show up or whatever. There's quite a few members of my team I don't have anything scheduled on the calendar with, and yet we still always talk on a regular basis. And I think that's kind of how it should be.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. I may start sharing that with my team that,
Sure.
I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I had a boss way back in the day. His name was Dan. Hi, Dan. Um, and he told me at my reviews, because I was always super nervous at my reviews, he says, reviews should really just be like, let's have a meal together and kind of check a bunch of check boxes, because there's nothing that we haven't talked about along the way. And it always made me feel very comfortable to go to him with anything that that I needed or that I was struggling with or anything like that. There was never a pressure to show up to the review with a bunch of interesting things to say. No, there really shouldn't be anything interesting to say at the review, because there shouldn't be anything off the table on a day-to-day basis.
One thing that a lot of teams are constantly thinking about is what the future will look like, especially as we're in the world of COVID and there's so much uncertainty around that. So, curious for you, how has business changed due to COVID? And what do you see, the next 6 months looking like for your business?
I mean, our customers are food service, right? Hospitality, cruise lines, hotels, restaurants. I, Everybody's been hit incredibly hard during COVID in those particular arenas. And so, us being ancillary to that, we've been hit really hard as well. And it's been super challenging. So, there was a time of, all right, let's get all of the things buttoned up, right? All the things that we don't have time to do normally, let's do all those and let's get all that done. Because at the beginning, you didn't really know that this was going to go on for a while, right? And so the idea of kind of pivoting with the always ready to pivot back was a little bit intimidating, especially for a very small company. But we found a few ways to be useful to our customers. One of the people that we have in common, he calls himself, he's in service. So we tried to do the same thing. We created a free recipe book for everybody in food service, so anybody could come in, put their recipes in, and then get a free, organized book of all their recipes. We've put up a bunch of webinars, including one on COVID and food safety, all free, just so that people have those resources. And it's altruistic, but it's also with the intention of keeping our names, on people's minds, so that when we come out of this, we're a company that they want to use and a resource that they want to continue to engage with.
Yeah, I think those are some great winning strategies that certainly help you to stay top of mind and, be viewed as a valued partner to a lot of these organizations in the community.
Here's
I
hoping.
I know you know a lot of people here in town, but there's traditionally some individuals that we don't know. You had mentioned, who your target
100%.
audience is for some of your clientele, but who else are you trying to meet here in town? Who would you like to further connect with?
Oh gosh, the list is lengthy. I think the Sam Fox organization would be amazing. I know they're building a new hotel here, and obviously there's all their restaurants, and I know that there's some new relationships that they have with other companies outside the valley. But that's always been an interesting one. The Oregano's folks, right? Picasso's is based here. I have some relationships based on previous lives with the PF Chang's folks, but any of the kind of bigger name restaurant chains and groups would be amazing.
And what is your unique selling proposition? What makes you so much different? Why do those kind of restaurant owners or businesses need to hire your team to help them in that process?
Yeah, so 10% of the US population is food allergic. And I don't know if you've heard of the veto vote, but when a group goes out to eat and somebody has food allergies, almost 100% of the time that person gets to pick where it is that you go. And so you really want your restaurant to be the restaurant of choice for food allergy people, where they feel comfortable. Because you're not just missing out on their revenue, you're missing out on the revenue of their entire family, all of their colleagues, all of their friends. And so we make that process super simple, super easy, super fast. And we work logistically with however it is that you want your guest experience to be. So we make your lives easier and we make you more money.
Hey, I'm sure all the restaurant owners would love to hear that, especially now. And so if you could look to attract in, those new individuals, even if we're ordering food off of Uber Eats, because a lot of us aren't even
Exactly.
going out to restaurants yet, maybe
That's
that
right.
would become their unique selling proposition and their, ability to get out there in the business community and
Yeah.
hopefully
And
have more orders.
in COVID, where you've got all of a sudden like phone line ordering, right, which wasn't really a thing before. You think about that, it's pretty single threaded, right? So a lot of phone companies know, a lot of restaurants have opened up extra phone lines during this time. And a food allergy order takes significantly longer. The average conversation takes between 8 and 12 minutes. And if you're now in curbside and delivery land where you're taking the phone orders, I mean, come on, like 8 to 12 minutes, you're exasperated with that person by the time you hang up the phone. And we take all of that time out and make it, significantly shorter.
So Q4 is here. We're looking to hopefully wrap up 2020 on a high note and finish the year
Seriously.
strong. But as you're working on your 2021 business plan, is there any key elements in there that you're really excited about that you'd like to share with everybody that's listening?
Not having COVID around. Recovery is our friend. Let's get the cruise ships back out. Let's get the travel industry, back up and running. And, that feeling of prosperity in the future as opposed to unknown in the future. I really am looking forward to crushing this whole unknown thing and putting it out of everybody's mind so that everyone's plans start to look like what they're supposed to, as opposed to this kind of big black hole of when are we going to get back to business. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in 2021.
I know you're a B2B type organization, but are there any interesting facts that you could maybe share with our listeners on an individual basis that they may not already know about the line of work that you're in?
So food allergies, individuals. Yeah. So one of the things that we talk a lot about kind of accidentally because people ask us a lot is around allergy testing. And I think that one of the things that people don't really know is that there isn't a good diagnostic test for a food allergy. So people go get those skin prick tests or blood tests. And really that's testing for, a histamine-based allergy, something that you could take Benadryl for. It's not testing for anaphylactic allergy. And so people tend to go and get those tests and then avoid all those foods. But it's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation. There's 60% false positives and an incalculable number of false negatives in those tests. Not a doctor. I have to give you that as a little caveat, but anybody in the allergy and immunology community would tell you the same.
So I know you're not a doctor, but what advice would you have if those tests aren't really helping them, then what's the next best step for them to find out what those allergies might look like?
It's a tough one, right? You have a reaction, you just ate a salad with 574 different ingredients in it, and trying to figure out what the one thing was is difficult. The testing can give you a good starting place. It can give you a good idea. But really your body will tell you, right? If you log your food and you know what to avoid, the allergists do have a test called the Oral Food Challenge, which sounds super fancy, but really what it is eat the food and find out what happens. But you don't want to do that with something that you think that you're anaphylactic to outside of the doctor's office or outside of the hospital. So let them coordinate tests. It's one of the don't try this at home, dangerous stunt. If you think you're allergic to something, don't eat it. But it's really the only test that an allergist can do to really determine your anaphylaxis levels there.
I would equate a lot of what you're working on to just the health and the wellness industry, which is a major thing, not only here in Arizona, but on a national level. We're even seeing that within corporations now. Are there any interesting trends that you're seeing, within that space that might be of interest to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot about how allergies are on the rise, and I get a lot of questions about why that might be. Food allergies, I mean. There's a lot of anecdotal story out there around GMOs and pesticides and processed foods and stuff like that. I guess we'll never really know. You can't take my body back to like the 40s and try and feed me pork, which I'm allergic to. I don't know what they've done, in the meantime, but there's a lot of story around that. I also feel like people were just as allergic in the past, but there's now a little bit more of a voice for the food allergic community. And, with social media and all the media that we have access to now, you hear a little bit more about it. Whereas I think before people were a little bit more, reserved in terms of discussing their food allergies and had a tendency just not to go out. Even now, 25% of food allergic people never eat outside their homes. So if you think about that from a business perspective and a missed revenue opportunity for the food service industry, it's a pretty big number.
Well, I'm thankful I don't have a ton of allergies because I love to eat out. So I know I'm definitely contributing to all the local restaurants. I'm doing my part to help keep them afloat.
Thank you.
So I'm curious for those individuals that want to learn a little bit more about your business, let's say the restaurant owners, maybe at some of the local resorts, because we have a number of those here in town,
Absolutely.
But I do know our culinary scene is one of the best in the country. So for those individuals that want to learn a little bit more about who you are and what you do, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
So you can give us a call at 833-EAT-SAFE or at our website at CertiStar.com or any social media at CertiStar. So CERTI STAR.
Awesome. So as we wrap up today's conversation, is there anything else that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Just my intense gratitude for listening. And thank you very much, Lindsay, for having me. I really appreciate it. I think this has been a great conversation.
Awesome. Thanks again for being here.